Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Fairy Tale Chapter Review, Fairy Tale Chapter 463, Black Carpet. Now, this chapter was a very simple chapter. Um, we have the beginning part is everybody basically reacting to Natsu's ludicrous, reckless plan of going straight for Zareth. Now, that was kind of like, really? We don't need to see the reactions. They're all going to be surprised. But Urza makes a point of saying how she believes in him and that she says, "All right, let's trust in him and let's let him do his thing." However, very surprisingly, even more surprising, is the fact that Gray was the one who didn't seemed to not believe in him. Now that could be some sort of ominous foreshadowing, because the whole point, it was they kind of made a joke out of it at the end when he's like, "Oh, I'm worried about him." And Juvia's like, "Oh my God, the day I would never thought this day would come, a day that he would be fighting over Natsu." So I mean that they kind of made a joke at the end about it, but that is actually a very, I would say, interesting point for. Actually, I think that was what makes it what makes it interesting is that I think that's character development in Gray. I mean, there's always been that relationship between Gray and Natsu, where they're like, "Oh, fire and ice, ha ha ha," they don't get along. And of course, there's always, with being Fairy Tale, everyone's pretty much friends deep down, and that, even though Natsu and Gray always tend to fight, they have, this deep respect for each other. But this truly is one of the first times where legitimately Gray is concerned and worried for Natsu. Not like, I mean, I'm sure there's been other points, but it's like, this seems just, for something, I don't know, it's very hard to describe, but this just seems to stand out amongst any other time. Now, I previously mentioned that this could be some form of foreshadowing. Well, the way it came off to me is that it sounds like Gray knows something. Like maybe he has in his year of in the time skip, he learned something. Maybe a possible hint that might lead him to believe. Maybe he sort of. I don't think he know. No one. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know that Natsu's END, but I feel like he has this something. He has this. I guess maybe because he's been friends with Natsu for so long that he has this sixth sense, maybe that bad's gonna happen. And given the fact that this is still early on in the arc, or should I say early on in the war portion of the arc, it's pretty safe to say that given the fact that next week's chapter is called Natsu versus Zareth, it's going to be a fight. Natsu was also was preparing immediately taking his bandage off, so we're going to see his special, I guess, technique that he has saved for Zareth. So, with that, keeping all of that in mind, next week's probably gonna be a big chapter. Now, as it pertains to the foreshadowing of something bad happening, as the readers, we know that Natsu is actually END, and Zareth has the Book of End, and now he has Natsu with him. And Natsu's pretty powerful, as he displays in this chapter. Now, granted, they're fodder characters, but he still did dispose of a lot of them at once. Now, as for what this possibly negative foreshadowing is, that in the next chapter 2, Zareth might awaken END, and Natsu could turn evil. Now, as we remember from the Tartarus arc, their whole goal was to return to Zareth so they could kill him, because that's what they were designed for. Now the question is END, what will he do? I mean, we're assuming that this transformation will cause Natsu to become some evil, similar to the demons of Tartarus. So, but is he going to immediately try and kill Zareth, or is he going to follow Zareth's order and help him wipe out Fairy Tale, which would then set up my previously theorized fight between Gray and Natsu in his END form, especially since Gray's goal, ever since he fought his father in the Tartarus arc, has been to destroy END. Now, as for, so back to the reactions. There's this in the whole questioning of whether they should follow Natsu or not. And, Gray being worried about Natsu being there all alone, trying to take on Zareth. Well, in the end, they decide that to take the gamble and allow him to deal with Zareth. But before we move on before they move on from that scene, Sharla makes a point to say, but he's not alone. He has Happy with him. Now that's a nice sentiment and sort of a cool, I guess, line, I guess you could say, and it probably sound really interesting and cool in the anime. But in terms of the actual context of the story, Happy's useless. I mean, he doesn't have a humanoid form like Lily or Sharla to be able to actually fight. His only usefulness to Natsu is being his flight or mode of transportation that he doesn't get sick on. So with that in mind, they move on to Natsu showing up, and the whole chapter title Black Carpet is from the idea that the army, that Zeref's particular part of the army that Zeref is with, is heading towards, is all bunched up together, so from the sky it looks like a big black carpet. And Natsu makes a point saying, oh, well, what happened to that old carpet we used to have that was dirty and ratty? Oh, Happy's like, you burned it to a crisp. And he's like, yes, I did. And then he goes in and takes out a bunch of fodder with some regular attacks that look, some of his traditional attacks, I think it's all flame, the wing beat attack, the wing attack, and the flame wing attack, and I think some talon, some flame imbued elbow shots. I don't know if that was something he's used before, and then of course the fodder tries to fight back, and he easily dusts off their shots, and then they all say, like, let's do the one thing that most villains don't tend to do. Let's all attack at once. One of ours will hit him, and then it'll stop him just long enough so that way the rest of us can catch up and hit him, which he does, but no problem. And so he decides to launch one big attack to just scare the living shit out of them. And that is depending on what your translation is, if one said Blaze King, the other one said Fire King, or Fire Dragon King, and the other one was Blaze Dragon King. But either point was, this is supposed to be a Flame Dragon King level Dragon's Roar, which is so damaging that it destroyed almost 1,000 soldiers and changed the very landscape from where they were at. Now, this, along with other particular moments of Natsu fighting, had some, I thought, were some of the most artfully well done art Mashima's had in the past couple of months. I mean, they were just that, especially the Fire Dragon King's roar was immensely powerful, and it looked so amazing. No, so this just really comes to show you how far Natsu's come, and so now the art, so given these points, the development in Gray in his concern for Natsu, the potential, the fight, Natsu, the great art and just awesomeness of the fight itself between Natsu and the fodder, I mean, I'm putting the fodder fight up on a higher pedestal just because the art looked good, but in all essence, it wasn't too anything really special. It's not like he was using them against one of the Spriggan 12 or Zeref himself. So, overall, I mean, there's many good points, and as a setup for the fight against Natsu and Zeref, it does fantastically. But as a standalone chapter, the progression was almost non-existent, and yes, the action and art for that action was good, but it was against fodder, so it's not like he really needed to use all that effort. So I'm gonna have to give it a balanced score of a good chapter. So it was, I feel but because good's probably maybe a little more leaning towards obviously the good side as opposed to the bad side, so it's not really balanced, but I feel the good in this chapter outweighs the bad, but you gotta still take the good with the bad. So I hope you all enjoyed this review and hope to see you all next week.